on this episode of the Opinion Spot, we're going to do a little something I like to call How Would I? In a sense. So in this episode, guys, how would I do a Daredevil and Shadow crossover? Daredevil, you guys know, is my number one, is my second overall all-time favorite Marvel character. There's only one guy ahead of him. But they're good friends. And one of my favorite pulp era hero characters is the Shadow. He knows. Yes. I love the Shadow. Anytime something comes out with the Shadow, I'm always gonna pick it up. I love his relationship with Margot Lane, things like that. His network, that's how he knows everything. He's able to bend people's minds with a lot of trickery, things like that. And of course, they do a lot of things. But a crossover between the Man Without Fear and the Shadow, the man who knows what lurks behind the eyes of evil. I would love this. I would love this so much. I have thought about a crossover between Daredevil and the Shadow for years. I even had other people try to come up with ideas for it. It's always been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to watch. So how would I do a crossover between Daredevil and the Shadow? Well, a crossover between the two would be very interesting. First and foremost, it is Lamont Cranston, the Shadow, who has found, I would have it where he has found basically a means of not immortality, but able to slow down his aging. They did a comic series where the Shadow has been around for years. He's in the new 21st century, and he has not really aged as much because he went into some kind of hibernatic sleep that has stopped him from he's really slowed down his aging. So he's still almost as young as when he first started. That's how I would do it. So to me, he has found a way somewhat, but that has also in a sense helped his arch nemesis, Siwoo Khan, who he's able to do it, but he knows that it can't last for long because one, he wants immortality, but he also wants to rule the earth because he is quote unquote the last descendant of Genghis Khan himself. So this would bring Khan into finding artifacts, an artifact that has been loaned to one of the big major museums in New York, and basically this is before what's going on with Daredevil in the comics now. So he'd still be no one would know his identity. He's just Matthew Murdock, a lawyer, and in helping with some cases that the museum has allowed Matt and Foggy to come to seeing this artifact, which is supposed to be the inside of this casing is DNA or blood of Genghis Khan. Just throwing that out there. And Siwoo Khan wants it. So he is in cases of trying to get it. While Daredevil was there, they were seeing them put this and christening it and things like that. Matt bumps into Lamont Cranston. He is and Lamont says, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to," and knocks Matt's cane over, and Matt goes to pick it up, and Lamont says, "I get it," picks it up for him, and that's their first meeting. And Matt is kind of looking at him and just hearing Lamont's heartbeat, and it's just slow, like slower than anybody's heartbeat. And Matt is already like, why is his heart that slow? Like, why is it not beating at a normal pace? It's very slow. And Foggy's like, Matt, are you okay? He's like, yeah. The person that Foggy and Matt helped through court are like, are you having a good time, Mr. Murray? He's like, jokingly, quite. Thank you for inviting me. Can you tell me about this piece? Things like that. And Matt and the curator is telling them about it and things like that. And then they tell them the legend that it supposedly has DNA of Genghis Khan's blood in it. That also brings into factor of Matt pretty much feeling like this is kind of dangerous. So Matt goes to where the item is to try and check it out, and he's there, and he can't see it really. So he's telling Foggy, describe what it looks like. And right before Foggy is about to tell him, Lamont Cranston comes up and starts telling him. And he's telling them it's more like a vase or a vase. It looks like an urn and things like that. And it's very old. And he says, once again, my apologies, Mr. Murdoch. And he's like, they're shaking hands, and he's like, oh, you know me? He's like, of course I know who you are. You are Murdoch and Nelson. You're two lawyers that are those that help the little guys and things like that. And Foggy's like, well, we just don't help the little guys. And Lamont is like, well, you do help more of the little people, those who are more less trodden and down, and I respect that. And Matt is like, well, thank you. They shake hands, and again, Matt is just getting a weird sense from Lamont. Like, even when he shakes his hand, his sense of touch is just, he's like, something is really off about this guy. Like, what is wrong with, like, what is about him? And that's when Margot Lane comes, or someone who looks like Margot Lane. I'm not saying it is Margot Lane, but it looks like Margot. And she's like, it's time to go, Lamont. And she's like, he's like, well, Mr. Murdoch, it was a pleasure meeting you. Perhaps when I need legal tendency, maybe I will call out to you two. And so Matt is just like, and then Foggy's like, yo, Matt, hey, Matt, yes, what? He's like, you okay? He's like, yeah, it's just that guy. He's like, that guy? You know who that was? That's Lamont Cranston. He's a wealthy philanthropist. His grandfather was, and we're trying to play off the factor of like Lamont Cranston and his grandfather and so gotta play off the factor that that's not the same person. However, before he leaves, Lamont is really, he knows something is going to happen. So comes the night, and we see thieves breaking into the museum to take the artifact. Little did they know that one thief, and then there was another case of thieves. Ninja, dressed in red. You know what this means. The Hand. So we got Siwoo Khan's people and the Hand all coming for the same artifact. And in doing so, this brings Daredevil out. He just felt wrong about having this out there in the first place, so he returned as Matt returned as Daredevil. And little did he know that there's another vigilante out with him. And Matt somewhat can sense him, but then he can't. This is the first time Matt is being... There's only a certain amount of people that can sneak up on Matt or get the drop on him and not get detected by him. The Shadow's one of them. And he goes and he's speaking in his, echoed voice, and there's a fight between the Hand, Siwoo Khan, the Shadow, and Daredevil fighting, and Daredevil's like, who are you? And the Shadow's like, not right now. And so they continue to battle. However, in the process, the artifact does get away. And that's when Matt, while that happens, everybody disappears. Matt, the Shadow, is trying to, but Matt says, hold it, like, wait a minute. Who are you? Like, and how do you know what's going on? Things like that. And the Shadow is almost in a sense saying, I have no time for this. That artifact cannot leave. They cannot get that artifact back to their boss. And Matt is like, who's their boss? Because those were Hand. That's the Hand. And Shadow's like, the Hand. And he knows all about that. And Matt is just like, how do you know that? And he says, I know. And Matt is just like, wait a minute. And as soon as the Shadow's trying to leave again, Matt is just like, you're not going anywhere until I get some answers from you. And yes, there maybe a little scrap happens. And as good as Matt is, he is not laying a hand on the Shadow. Shadow is just dodging everything, almost like he is not even clear touching. Matt is not even near touching him until finally, and Matt's just like, wait, what? Like, this guy is good. Like, what is? And the Shadow just does one thing and drops Matt. And Matt's like, I didn't even see that. When did he hit me? Like, and then that's when the Shadow says, on your feet, Matthew Murdoch. And he's just like, wait, what? He's like, what? Wait. I don't know what you're talking, like, try to play it off. And he's like, I know. And he says, we met earlier today, right here, same museum. And he says, and Matt says, and Shadow says, you're Daredevil, the man without fear. And he's like, well, you have me at a disadvantage, Mr. I'm the Shadow. And how I would play it off is the Shadow was from back in the day. Like, there's not a lot of, he was just, and this is where I would have it where Matt was like, wait, the Shadow, that guy was only a legend. That's only an urban legend that's been told around these parts of New York. And he's like, you're real. He's like, yes, I'm very real. He doesn't tell him much, but he says, we have to get the artifact back. We have to get that urn back. And he says, the curator says it's nothing. No, there is DNA of Genghis Khan, and if Siwoo Khan, his descendant, gets it, he will truly become immortal and things like that. And Matt starts telling him about the Hand more, but the Shadow's like, I know who they are. What I don't know is why they want the urn, and they want it for a certain reason. They want it as well. So we play it off. We're there. They use a little bit of detective work, but also discover that, and while they're investigating, the Shadow is kind of also. He's also, while Matt is doing his, he's also kind of kind of grading Matt on his skills, and he's telling him, "You're good, but you can be so much better if you you know, things like, well, you lower your guard to, you know, you lower your left when you should keep it up. You know, your skills are good, but," and he's just naming names like Stick taught you well, and Matt is just like, how do you know Stick? Like, how do you know these people? And so that's the key that the Shadow knows. He does know. He knows about the hand. He knows about Stick. He knows about Elektra and everything like that. And by doing so, when Siwoo Khan men track down the hand, it becomes, and Siwoo Khan comes at the hand, they are all together, and they're like, it becomes, it's not a team up, it's more of a battle. Like, that belongs to me, that belongs to that is my ancestor, not yours, you know. And the hand Archbishop, I think I would use that, basically is she's like, it may be, but it is mine now, it is ours now, we will use it to fully become immortal, instead of we can just resurrect people, things like that. So it would not be a team up between the hand and Siwoo Khan. It's a battle for dominance over this urn that does have the blood of Genghis Khan in it. Its DNA soaked into it. So and that, in the process, the fighting would go on. The two heroes would get there, and the battle would ensue between the two heroes, and Matt using his skills and remembering what Shadow told him, like, you lower your guard too much, don't lower your guard, things like that. In the process, the urn would get destroyed, and from there, Siwoo Khan would try to run. Shadow chases after him. Khan! And Khan, and he's just saying, look at us. We look good for men our ages, don't we? Like, they're very old. Like, and he says, how long did you sleep? Like, Siwoo Khan would know that the Shadow slept, did that same mystical hibernation, and he said, you know that the sleep just slows down our aging, but eventually, basically him saying, like, we both are overexerting it, basically abusing it. It's gonna catch up with us. And Shadow says, I know it has. And he shows, like, his hand, one of his hands. I didn't mention that, like, one of his hands is very old looking. Like, so he keeps gloves on, and he says, I know, but if it does anything to stop you, then it's worth the risk stopping you. And Siwoo Khan is like, how long have we done it? We've done this for centuries. Like, and knowing that he's not gonna stop, Shadow's not gonna stop. Shadow even says, I'm not gonna stop until you're either down, buried, and dead, or we're both gonna die. And in the process, Siwoo Khan he just jumps off the building. He jumps off the building, but is caught by his men, who fly away. And he says, till next time, Shadow. And the hand with Daredevil is now, they disappear, and they're all like, blast you, the hell's demon, blast you, Daredevil, like, we could have had true immortality. And Matt's just smiling. Yes, Matt's smiling about it. So the urn is destroyed, and he tells the Shadow returns, and he says, did you catch Khan? No, he retreated. He said, what of the hand? Gone. I said, well, the urn has been destroyed. And he's like, good. But he says, but I'm gonna take I'm gonna take it. And Matt's like, wait, you're gonna take it where? Trust me. And in the process, the next day, Matt returns to the museum and sees that the urn is back in its casing. And he's like, wait, how the... And so Foggy's like, what's wrong? Like, he's like, nothing. The urn is a fake. It's a fake. But it's a fake to just throw people off. The Shadow has the real urn that has the DNA of Genghis Khan in it. And in process, Matt is in Hell's Kitchen and he's on the rooftop, and next you know, the Shadow sneaks up behind him again. Basically even says, you're not paying attention, like you're not aware, and he's like, and he basically tells him, Matt's just like, how did you do that? There's only 2 people that can do that. And Shadow says, well, I'm the 3rd. And he says to Matt, he gives him some advice and tells him, like, he says to him, how did you know I was Daredevil? And when he's about to leave, he just turns to Matt and says, I always knew. End. So that's kind of a story how I would do a crossover between Daredevil and Shadow. It would involve Siwoo Khan and the Hand all trying to get this artifact, a very ancient looking urn that did have blood of Genghis Khan, and the whole concept is a legend of if those to drink from it, because it would give you like immortality, true immortality. That's how I would do it. So that's how I would do a crossover between Daredevil and Shadow. Who would I get to write it if I was to do it that way? Somebody who's written both characters, that understands the character. I believe Charles Soule wrote the Shadow one point in time. I can't remember, but I would get either Charles Soule, the current writer of Daredevil, maybe. I don't think Krasinski's ever. I don't think he's written Shadow, but yeah, somebody who's written it. It would be a crossover between Marvel and Dynamite, because Dynamite owns the Shadow's rights. But yes. So how do you guys like it? Did you like what I came up with? Most of that came off the top of my head to a degree. I like to think on the fly. I was like, yeah, let me just think this out. So what did you think? Did you like it? Did you like what I came up with? Would you like a Shadow and Daredevil crossover? Love to hear your comments in the section down below. As always, thank you for listening. This is the Opinion Spot, where your opinion matters. As always, guys. And deuces.